Welcome back, everybody, to Stuff That Matters Now. I am in Auckland with Tim O'Connor at Auckland Grammar School. Good afternoon, Tim.
Afternoon, Harv. How are you?
I'm good. I'm great to be here. 2021, we sat down to do this podcast. We never quite got sat down. I set up the gear, and you got a message that came in to say the school had some issues with COVID, and you had to scramble because enough teachers had been exposed or whatever to COVID, and so we never got the recording done. But now here we are. So it's great to be back. And we're here, Tim, because of the lovely email you sent to me about a month ago, reflecting on your time with Collective Intelligence, and it reminded me to get my ass back here and sit down and have that conversation.
I shouldn't have emailed you, should I?
You shouldn't have emailed me. Tim, look, it's great to see you. We met initially at Palmers North Boys High. My boys went through there, and you were, and I've written the books, which you're in it, and I should have asked your permission to be in the book, but I forgot that bit. I said some nice things, so it's okay. And it was reflecting, Tim, that you opened the gate to the diversity for us, because Collective Intelligence was just for business people when we started. And then somebody put your name forward, and I thought, nah, principal doesn't fit here. And then somebody else put your name forward. And so I popped into the office and had a conversation. And you remember the book that was in your library?
Was it Jim Collins?
It was
Good to
Great. Yeah,
Still
Good to
there.
Great. Still there?
Yeah, still with lots of tags in it
There
too.
There it is. Good to Great from Tim Collins. And I saw that and said, have you ever read that thing? And he said, yep, this is, and he pulled it out and there was bookmarks all through it. And I thought, okay, we've been studying that book ourselves, and we thought, okay, we'll give it a go. And so thank you, because you were our guinea pig and you fitted into Collective Intelligence like a glove. And it then made me think, well, who else could come in?
No,
So,
thank you, because I remember that you making an appointment and coming in, and I wasn't really quite sure what you were asking or what I was getting myself into, and I found it appropriately challenging at the time to sort of be working with like what I found out to be like-minded people, but in totally different industries and ones that I didn't understand. But once we had a first visit, and it was to the Hawke's Bay and Telegraph Hill, and I remember during that day thinking, oh, maybe I do have something I could add in here, and not sort of thinking about yourself and not thinking about your own organisation. I think the drive back from that was actually like, oh, okay, I get it. So it's very useful. Yeah.
And so from that, Tim, a little light went off in my head, because you brought a whole lot of skills in that, you know, leadership skills and stuff that were more developed than some of the entrepreneurs and business people. You ran a bigger team, and from there we've opened the gates to every industry. The only people we haven't worked with are the gangs, and I tried, and I was naive, and one other I'm not going to name, but those two didn't fit, and I was incredibly naive with the gangs, because there was a chap who had left the mongrel mob supposedly and turning over a new leaf and so forth, and anyway, he hadn't. But I was intrigued what the gangs knew that we didn't know, and so it was my curiosity to go in there. But I was naive.
Sounds like a podcast in itself.
It was, yeah. He's still in jail, but yeah, we have worked with most industries now, and and also you open the door for lots of wonderful school principals that came in through your recommendation. They're tough to work with. Finding time, finding a schedule. Your days are more busy than, your years are more full than any other profession I know.
Yeah, but it's rewarding. That's why you do it. So
Yeah.
it's that stuff. If you don't work a day in your life, then we don't feel like you're working a day in your life. It's a good thing, isn't it? Well, we might be working some long hours doing what we do, but you see the reward and there's the benefit.
Yep. So, Tim, you've been here how long at Auckland Grammar?
I'm in my 13th year. I'll be 13 by the end, in 4 weeks' time.
And I remember when you first started and you thought it might be a 10-year stint. You've done 10 years at Palmy Boys.
I did.
Yeah. So 23 years now as a principal. That's a long time.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I don't want to think about that.
Yeah, it's a long time. And yet you haven't changed a bit. A few more grey hairs, but otherwise...
There's quite a few there.
How have you changed since you've been at Grammar?
Good question. Well, hopefully I'm a better person than I was. That would be my primary aim. I think I'm becoming a better listener. I think I've understood. Well, I'm seeing the benefit in that, and that use the people around you. I've been a bit of I am a bit of a perfectionist, so I like things done in a certain way. So if people don't do it in the manner that I want it done, then I'll do it myself. And I think I did more of that at Palmy Boys than I have here. I think we've got a growing a team here who I entirely trust, and we have a very good understanding of who we are, and so you can let it go to a degree, and I'm becoming better at that.
Wry smile on your face.
Yeah, well, I still can't help myself because there are certain things I think need to be, a lot of things I think need to be done in a certain way if you're going to grow people and if you're going to get the right outcomes. And so I have to keep moving myself away from that sort of default position in order to grow an environment and a community that's sustainable. And if I can get to if we're at a point where I don't actually need to be in the environment and the environment continues, then I'll see that as success.
You've always had strong opinions. Is that still there?
I think anyone who knows me would say yes on a daily basis.
Yeah. And what's that like to work around? To be around?
I just drive straight through the middle of it. I mean, what am I like to be around?
No, for people working with you.
Well, I hope people who work with me, and we've got a big team, obviously, so not everyone's close to what I do, but I hope people would say, would understand that the decisions I make are principled, and some might say stubborn. I think I was dealing with an issue just this week, and I think I got described as being relentless, sort of not letting something go, and I'm okay with that if I believe in it, and I'll carry on and metaphorically fight to the death.
Yep.
To make sure that things are right, and so that's really important to me. So, and I think the team who work closest with me totally get that, And I think they'd know, well, I hope they know that I'd go in to fight for them, and I'd go in to fight for this place, so for all the right reasons.
Tim, I remember that from Palmy Boys. So I remember sitting there with my oldest son, Guy, when he was coming into Palmy Boys the year before, sitting there with the other third formers and their parents, and you being very clear, this is what Palmerston North Boys was about, and these are the rules, and don't be coming to school and thinking we're going to change them for you. And you name the other good schools around you and go, if this doesn't sound like you, then go to these other schools. And it was interesting to see how that ruffled lots of people's feathers. And yet lots of others just like, yeah, that's cool. Do you still give that speech?
Yep. I'll be speaking to the incoming third form and their parents in October, and that message will be just the same. Why would it change? I just think if we're going to build community, you need to start with saying what are the standards and what are the agreed standards. So don't join our community if you don't agree with the standards, because it's not going to work, and we're going to fight, and we're not going to change our position. I keep saying that to the boys, like, do you think that just because you don't like one part of grammar that we're going to change it for you? The answer is, well, we're not. We will remain exactly the same, and it does come back to our principled point of view. And everything, we'll sweat the small stuff. You sweat the small stuff, you don't have to worry about the bigger stuff. And by having clarity of standards and knowing, the boys knowing that, and staff knowing that we're all accountable for those things, and we will be honest, and we will call it out. If it's not up to standard, then it needs to be spoken to, because how can you become a high performance environment if you're not actually prepared to recognise where there is fault or where there is something that you can do better? So we're not going to compromise in any way, and that's, I think that's the beauty of an environment like this, and perhaps a society where young men don't have that same clarity. So they can come in here, they enter our gates, they're all wearing the same navy on navy uniform that's been here since 1869. Nothing's changed. And it doesn't matter where you come from, whether you come from a decile 20 home or whether you're coming from, a very, very low decile home, that you walk in our gates and it's exactly the same for everyone. And we talk about that being a meritocratic environment, and where you're measured on your attitude, you're measured on your performance, and everyone can actually meet the basic standards. Everyone can be positive. Everyone can be polite. That's not determined on your academic ability or your sporting prowess. So those things are all secondary. You can all do these things in superb fashion. And they do, because, well, they know we'll hunt them down if they don't. But largely we don't, because we don't need to. And there's a whole story around that that really is not, in my point of view, I think, I'll go back a step and say, I think there can be an impression of an environment like Palmy Boys and Grammar that we're draconian, that we're disciplinarians, but actually we're quite the opposite, because we set the boundaries, we set the structure, and then we just are talking to boys about, like, if you're not meeting that standard, why not? And so largely today, what our young men do is they do it because they want to be part of the community, they want to be part of it, so they add to it by showing pride in every component, how they speak to other people, how they get on a bus, whether they'll stand for someone on the bus to offer them a seat. All of those things, they are defining, who they are, but also actually defining who we are. And we can swing, when we've got the weight of them with us, it just continues to swing in that direction.
A memory comes to mind, Tim, when you hosted your collective intelligence team at Palmy Boys, and the team came into assembly in the morning, and you were in front of the school talking to the boys. Do you remember this?
I don't remember the day, but I remember the year.
Yep. And some of the boys had done something. I can't remember what it was, but they had broken some rules out in public, and they had let the team down. And you were pretty stern with the boys that morning and gave them, quite a talking to, as in the whole school, around the standards and what they meant and being let down. And then assembly finished and the kids were going to their classrooms, and you came and joined us, and we went for a walk through the school. And one of the women in the team was surprised that the boys greeted you like not a mate, but there was a bit of love there and respect, and they were pleased to see you. And she was surprised and asked you, you've just dressed them down here, and yet you go out and they greet you. And I remember your response going, boys like to know what the rules are, and they don't want anybody messing with the rules, and it gives them certainty. It really stuck with me.
And boys like rituals, and assembly is a ritual, it's a tradition, and they get that is a formal context, and they get that there's a certain persona, largely, that there's a certain persona that comes from the headmaster standing at the lectern. But there's also fun to be had in that context. So they need to see that you're real. And look, the boys have got very, very good bullshit detectors on them, and they will spot anyone. And I talk to our new teachers about that. It's like, don't fake anything with a grammar boy, because he'll look straight through you and work it out. So be upfront, be direct, tell them how it is, and be yourself, because it's really important.
And are they okay with that, with the boys being with people who are not perfect?
Boys are not worried about whether you're perfect or not. What the boys here want to know is that you're the person in front of them who's going to guide them. You're the person in front of, in a teacher's sense, you're the person in front who has the specialist knowledge, and you're going to give me that knowledge, and you're going to treat me with justice. You're going to treat me with dignity, and there's going to be some mutual respect. I think for most young men, if they don't feel there's respect coming the other way, then you've lost them too, and they deserve it. Like I don't remember yelling at a boy. I don't know why I would, unless I'd lost the plot myself.
Yep.
So, even if we're going through a suspension process with young men, I'm talking to them about their actions. I'm not talking to them about who they are. We try and separate those things and go, these are the actions that we're actually addressing. So don't make judgments about them. Make judgments about their actions, because look, we've all been a teenager. We all know they get it wrong. They're allowed to get it wrong. You just hope that they don't repeatedly get it wrong. And
it's not easy being a teenager, Tim.
No.
And even now with the technology thing,
Yes.
It's just it must be doubly hard. I'm so pleased that my boys sort of missed it. My daughter missed it, only just. But I think what a nightmare that would be for parents now.
Yeah, absolutely. Stand out in front of our gates at the beginning of the day. They're all getting their last fix of their cell phone, and they're addictive, and they're designed that way, right? We spend too much time on them ourselves. So what are they going to do? They're going to do exactly the same, and they know how to navigate their way around them much more, or in better fact. In fact, I had to hand my phone to student at the front gate and then an IT guy because I had no idea what was going on with my phone this afternoon. The critical thing, you talk about, if we talk about habits and, creating good habits, creating bad habits, well, phones, are a huge distraction in young people's lives. So how critical, we've never allowed phones to be out in public, but at the same, during a school day, but we've never fudged it, we've never said to them, you cannot have a phone on school site, because we'd just be pretending to each other that they don't, when we know they've got at least one phone in their pocket. And that's for some of them, in case one gets confiscated, they've still got another.
Right.
So let's not pretend those things, and but we need to have a 5-hour window, effectively the school day, where that's not the distraction, so they can actually, learn in a classroom environment. They can get out there and play all of the myriad of games. There's probably 700 boys on the field navigating their way across, being physical. We need them to be doing those things so that we've got them in the right headspace to learn.
So the boys are allowed to bring the phones into school?
Yep, we just don't want to see them. So as long as we don't see them, then it's not a problem to us.
Right.
They need to be off or on vibrate.
Right. So I stood out here at 3:15 and watched the boys file past this afternoon. I've done that once before. It's sort of creepy, I know, but I'm always intrigued watching kids at the end of the school day and how they are. And the thing I noticed, just the sheer diversity of the ethnic background is huge. And the boys seemed really settled at the end of the day. So there wasn't, they seemed relaxed and settled. Yeah, it was quite interesting.
Yep, I think largely, I think the great thing about a daily assembly is you can read the vibe. I can read the vibe of the school within, minutes of an assembly. Likewise, I stand at the gate, stand at the traffic lights at the end of the day because I want to read the vibe. I just want to know whether we've got things right. You can read it. Don't ask me how, but it's critical.
It's called a sense.
Yeah, it's just critical. And when they're calm, they've, the structure's right. Dairy farming, if the herd's calm, things are pretty happy, and it's exactly that sort of sense. And the same movement between classes. The beauty about, we're in this block here, and if you think this block was it was opened in 1916, still used in exactly the same manner. There are classrooms on 3 floors, and my office and the deputy's offices are the only offices in this block, with the rest being classrooms. And I just sort of reflect on the design of this. We don't typically design schools like this. Now you see administration blocks and administration suites. I came into this profession to be with young people, to teach, and I just love the fact that this block is a living, breathing teaching block, and I can tell when the bell goes. I can tell what the mood is with the type of movement around here, and I know if students are late into a classroom, I know if teachers are late, and I can see all 3 floors. So it's a blessing for me, probably the opposite for them.
Tim, I've been here and was amazed that you opened the door and you're in the assembly room. You go straight into, how many boys here?
2,750.
And it's a bit of a shock. Just this mass of young males. It's just like, woof, yeah. And you're right there.
Yeah, that's what we do, right? It's just what we do on a daily basis, and I can't imagine leading a school without being able to talk to them every day, in terms of in a formal context, because there are just messages that you know they need at certain times. And so if I can feed those things through, then I can tell you whether I've hit the spot with them or not, because it's not only, well, they're always silent in an assembly, but the level of stillness determines whether the point, is pertinent to them. And they're all sorts of little messages. I've just been talking to them about just concentrating at this time of the year on controlling the controllables. Like, there's so much going on. Don't worry about the stuff that's uncontrollable. Just let that, flow by, and control the stuff you can, because for a lot of our boys now, they've only got weeks left. They're seniors, have only got weeks left of teaching, so just need them to worry about the stuff they can control, not worry about the exam paper that's ahead, or whether the questions, all of that sort of stuff.
Yep.
And I just, you read those sort of things by being around them, lunchtimes and blah, blah, blah. That sort of stuff's critical.
There's lots of school principals who are administrators. I know that they don't see much of the kids at all. And it's been something you've always, and I've been intrigued to see if that has changed with you, but it's exactly the same, isn't it? Yeah.
No, it's just... that's what you do this job for, Starts with an assembly environment. Well, normally it starts with a group of prefects who hang around, who want to give me their views of the world, or their views of me, and then it extends into an assembly environment, and it'll go through the day. I'll always be in the grounds at lunchtime if I'm here. I've got to get out there, and because again, you're reading vibe. You're talking to boys. You're seeing boys in a different context. They see me at the lectern. I don't want them to only see me as the person standing at the lectern. I want to be able to have a conversation. I had a conversation with a boy who today who's been updating me because he's been in the World of Wearable Arts Awards processes, and so I've learnt quite a lot about him, and I've sort of going, well, so where does this fit in terms of the school context, and how can we recognise you? Those sort of guys wouldn't come and have those conversations with you unless they could be with you in the grounds, or see you in the grounds, approach you, walk shoulder to shoulder, or say something in passing. And I think that's entirely acceptable, and it just grows the community. And
Yep.
At the end of the day, if you're not in the community and you want to be sitting behind a desk, don't become don't become an effective school principal, in my mind. Like I could consume my entire day on health and safety, on buildings, on compliance, on dealing with the Ministry of Education. Just carry on responding to Official Information Act requests and ombudsman stuff and all of that sort of stuff. We can still we've got to do all that stuff, but that has to fit outside somewhere so that you actually remember why you're doing it, and that is to be educating, in our sense, young men. And so if I'm not there, they'll ask me where I have been. If I wasn't at assembly because I had a meeting or something, and I'm out in the grounds at lunch, and I'll go, where were you? I was at a meeting. Really? So I just think it's healthy.
Yep.
It's real.
Were you a better teacher or principal?
I was. I loved teaching. I think I have enjoyed. I don't know which I'm better. I think I've enjoyed the impact you can have on more people leading a school environment, and that's just a huge privilege. And so I don't know that I could get back in the classroom now. I don't think I'd be very good. I think I'd be terrible. Occasionally I do go back in and take someone's lesson. I use all my tricks in one lesson.
Right.
And whoever's class I've taken, I go, thanks very much. You just destroyed me because I've used everything in one go. Teaching is high energy.
Yep.
You know, and if we're a 7-period day, 40-minute period day, and if you're not on for those, I remember Dave Sims, who was rector at Palmy Boys before me, and then he came up to the Blues and was doing some event management stuff. And I always remember Dave saying to me that they would gear, for a week for an event, so a blues match, and then sort of that was it, sort of like and start again. And he said, running a school is you're running an event every day, so get up and get on with it, because you've got to be. You just don't know what's going to happen.
Yep.
And I think that's the energising thing about being part of a school environment is it is an event every day, and it is just the best sort of job in the world, I think.
What was your first day like at Palmerston Boys High as principal?
Well, I had actually Natana Lobb, who's now deputy headmaster here, was a student at Palmy Boys, and he reminded me the other day actually that he was a member of a group who provided a welcoming porphyry. It never happened before at Palmy Boys, and I didn't realise probably at that time that was sort of quite significant, and for students like Natana and others, it gave them a sort of a licence, and I didn't know that was nothing to do with me. That was just. But I do remember then remembering that I was 34 when I started, and look, that board had some courage. I'd give them that, and I remember getting back to my office and sitting down in the chair and going, what am I meant to do? I've got no idea. And I leaned back in my chair and said to Joy Tonetti, who is my secretary, Joy, what am I meant to do? And she wheeled her chair into the doorway and said, don't worry, it'll happen. and look, it did. That first 6 months at Palmy Boys was difficult, because so many things happened. The Spears Centre, the new Performing Arts Centre, got burnt down on the day before I started, the night before I started. And I remember ringing Dave Sims and going, can you look after the media and do all that sort of stuff? Because I got no idea what's going on with and Dave was great. I'd say, and then, there were students who were killed that year, and, terrible tragedies, and learning pretty quickly that there just aren't answers a lot of the time, and that you can't help people. Sometimes there's people in their hour of need, and the only thing you can do is be there. While I think in our sort of roles, you want to fix things, you just sometimes realise you can't, and you're powerless. And that's a terrible sort of feeling, other than offering support. There's just nothing you can do, nothing you can say. And we had, multiple examples. I think there were 6 deaths and student deaths, or just tragic accidents, in the first 12 months that I was at Palmy Boys.
How many?
There were 6 that were killed in the first 12 months, yeah. And I remember thinking, I didn't sign up for this, and how do you deal with it? How do you respond? You just learn to, don't you? And I think I learnt just shut up and sort of listen, and be there.
First day at grammar?
First day at grammar. It's very, very different altogether because I started at Palmy Boys at the beginning of term 3, and I think if you're leaving a head's position, leaving mid-year is really good. So like leaving end of term 2, leaving end of term 3 is good. But I did work out the difference between starting at the beginning of term 3 and starting at the beginning of term 4, particularly in this environment, because it's a Cambridge examination environment. So then Cambridge exams started 2 weeks into the term, 2 weeks into term 4. So the senior boys were here for 2 weeks, and I said to the boys on the first day that my job was to observe, and I was going to observe and I was going to watch what happened, and I was looking forward to that. In fact, the very first grammar has a really impactful way of recognising student success at a high level, and we call it crossing of the stage. And on the very first day of term 4, we were celebrating the national sporting events from the holidays. And the very first one was cycling, and cycling nationals had been held in Palmy. And Grammar beat Palmy Boys to win the junior team time trial. And so I'm reading this report. They all knew where I'd come from. So I'm reading this report, and I'm reading this, and Auckland Grammar School beat Palmerston North Boys High School. Well, there was this sort of wave through the assembly hall of that I noticed and I could feel, and then when there was an applause, the applause for crossing, it was out of this world. It was like,
take that.
Remember who you're part of.
Take that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was part of the very first assembly, which was, and you've been in the hall, and you've been in this hall when it's full.
It's quite something. Yeah,
it's sort of. There's something, it's got a spiritual feel about it,
yep.
And particularly when it's full and you're in your sort of midstream assembly, it's a pretty powerful environment to be part of. So I do. That was the first day I stood at the lectern, and the first day, you're looking out at the lectern from Auckland Grammar School in the Great Hall. You're not looking out into, a layer of boys. You're looking out into 3 layers of boys because they're on all 3 floors. And that in itself is, quite daunting. That's why we don't put just anyone at the lectern, because it can actually... you really need to be there first to understand it. And I think probably the thing that, in fact, I ran into I ran into an old boy in the hockey car park on Wednesday night, and he came up to me and introduced himself. He said, "You won't remember me, but I was in the 6th form when you started." And so we started having a conversation about what that was, and one of the things, and if I go back to that trait of perfectionism, in the first day when I wandered the campus, I was sort of looking at the rubbish and going, I can't tolerate this. I can't be in an environment like this.
In the period of observation.
In the period of observation. So yes, so you think about daily assembly environment. The second assembly of the day was I have finished observing, and I thought I'd come to a flagship school in this country, and I I don't think flagship environments, have rubbish. So from today, and I explained to them how we were not going to have rubbish in the environment anymore, and what the system was and how that was going to operate. And it was, I think at that time it was probably received with scepticism that it could be achieved, but the boys didn't. I knew the boys would understand it, and it wasn't about being disciplinarian about it. It was actually about the start of building community and how we look after our environment. And we look after our environment, we look after each other, etc. And it's got better and better. And
can you remember what you imposed that day?
I didn't impose anything that day in terms of consequence. I didn't impose anything that day. What I said to them was that in an environment where that is respectful, then we actually look after what we've got. And I said to them, if you wander around this place, it's pretty impressive, in terms of buildings and structures. So why would we disrespect that? And so what I need you to do is to put your rubbish in the bin. And if you don't put your rubbish in the bin, then someone else has to pick it up. And so that could be you. You're going to have to pick up someone else's rubbish. But if you put your rubbish in the bin, no one else has to pick it up, and you don't have to pick up someone else's. So the general rules are, if you walk past rubbish, then it's your obligation. Doesn't matter whose it is, as a member of this community, you pick it up and you put it in the bin. And that's including me. If I walk past rubbish, I'll pick it up. I'm not going to ask a boy to pick it up. I'll pick it up. And probably if you ask the boys what I do at lunchtime, I'll say you're probably picking up rubbish somewhere. But that's, to me, about leading by example. So we all do it. We're all in it together. And if we all actually put our rubbish in the bin, then no one has to pick it up. And, lots of schools have rubbish, a form class go out after lunchtime and they pick up all the rubbish. And so then it's like, we'll just pretend it's always good. So it's okay to dump your rubbish at lunchtime, then we'll send a class out. You come back between periods, it's perfect. Well, we're just fudging it again. So I said to because most of the senior school left, then my approach was really with the junior school to say, I can move you through. So what I said to the seniors who were remaining is, hey, if this rubbish thing doesn't actually sort itself out, then we're not sending form class out anymore. We're not doing that. If we're going to send a form class out, it'll be the 7 forms, because you're the guys who lead. So that's what we do. Leaders actually lead by example. So you're the ones that are going to go and pick up the rubbish. We haven't had anyone go out collecting rubbish, and they're bought into it. They really have. You have to monitor it. It's not perfect. You have to monitor it. You have to continually remind them. And I reminded the boys last week. There was one day last week where there was rubbish in 2 areas of the school, and I just said to them, I don't expect to walk out there and have to say to you guys, can we pick this up? And I don't expect to be talking in assembly about litter. I want to be talking about positive things. So can we just do the basics? Can we do the basics well? Then we move on, right? We don't have to talk about that stuff. And largely we don't.
Both Palmy and particularly Grammar have got lots of history of what's come before. And so that comes with the job. But then you've got to navigate the future while recognising the past. How do you balance that?
Well, the first thing you have to do is understand the past and know what your responsibilities are, given what has happened before you. And this environment has been a feed-forward environment, so there are so many people through time who have fed forward, not for their own personal benefit, but for the benefit of future generations. And so we talk to the boys about the fact that we're benefactors of those who have done a good job before us and those who have fed forward. And so now it's our turn, whether if the Owen Eastwood belonging stuff, it's our time in the sun, and while the sun is shining on us, we will accept those responsibilities. So understanding what people have done to create the environment we've got now is critical. And then it's a difficult task to go, what are the traditions and what are the rituals that have to be protected at all costs, and what are we reacting to now, and what might we have to react to in the future, or what do we build, and not physically, what do we build in terms of the essence of the school, so that we're prepared for what's to come. And there's all sorts of examples of that type of thing. If, for example, Grammar's a teacher-directed pen and paper environment, and there is a general perception amongst probably most people across Auckland that we're in the dark ages in a information technology sense. Prior to COVID, 5 years prior to 2020, we were looking at what sort of future dimensions we needed, we thought we might need in terms of teaching and learning. And so we started building a what's called a learning management system, so one which students can interact with teachers in. And I also sort of am of the belief that if you're going to, in a large environment, if you're going to make something effective, you actually have to get the majority to use it before it's effective. So, for example, you could put a learning management system in place and you're going to get 20% of, people who are just users, just the same in any aspect of society, right? So what we decided was we weren't going to launch this thing until we actually felt we had 70% staff having functional knowledge of it, because otherwise boys were going to go across classes and go, well, that teacher uses it, but that one doesn't, so they're not going to use it because they want consistency. We sort of hit that mark, believe it or not, in late 2019 and 2020, when that first there was signs that things weren't going well in terms of COVID-19. We launched late 2019 this system, and boys were familiar with it. And in February of 2020, we sort of went, well, actually, what say things turn to custard? Can they rely on this independently? So we rostered a cohort home a day and said you have to work online, and teachers, you need to set the work online. So by about, I think it was 4th or 5th of March of that year, they shut the country. And so we were able to operate online. So we, within 24 hours of the boys being home, we were operating online. And classes were set, so we carried on being sort of seamless.
After 5 years of preparation?
Yeah, just quiet. We weren't preparing for COVID. We were preparing for what we thought where we needed to be. And we were prepared to be patient about it. And I think we're now on the crest of something with artificial intelligence and how we're going to use generative AI. And again, we're working behind the scenes to prepare for what everyone's using it. Students are using it, teachers are using it, but we want to be saying what is the way we want to be using it moving forward, and are there environments in which you can do that in a closed context to maximise privacy of students, given that we're dealing with under 18-year-olds. So we're working in that frame on that sort of stuff now, and I think it's exciting. I would have been one I would have been I'm a skeptic about many things about education. I was certainly a skeptic about AI, and I remain very concerned about students who use AI to replace learning. But if we teach students how to use it to aid their learning, then it will become a significant tool in the future.
What do kids need to learn now, Tim, that they didn't in the past?
Well, they need to learn all of the basics. Those things haven't changed.
Yep, so it's in the past, they had to learn those. What else do they need to learn now in this new age?
Well, they need to know how to navigate an online environment. That's critical. So we've got to spend more time, not to replace teaching time, because we still, we have to be moving in a rapid context to get enough content across. But we need to be also teaching them how to actually use, how to operate and how to be in an online environment. And that's not only in an academic sense, but it's also in a social sense, because they're spending so much time in it that they need to understand what their social responsibilities are. So we do spend a lot of time with boys talking to them about things like, just being frank, the Harmful Digital Communications Act and what their responsibilities are. When someone sends you a photo that is inappropriate, what are your responsibilities? Because as soon as you share it, then you're actually taking ownership. So those sorts of things are critical if we're going to. That's critical in terms of them being able to be, again, if we go back to the best form of themselves, then the online context they need to be. We spend a lot of time with boys about who you are, how you behave in a public environment, particularly in groups of people. And I don't know, well, if you think about a stadium environment now, and why do we accept booing, for example? Why do we accept, outlandish behaviour in a public environment? And so we talk to the boys about the fact that we need a generation coming through who are going to revolutionise this, and that they're going to lead the way in that, so that when others increase the temperature and that they act inappropriately, that they don't respond, because all that does is incite and elevate. So I think we see more of that now, and you go to sideline behaviour, that as soon as you feel aggrieved and you engage, then you are adding to the issue and you're making it more complex. If you can disengage, then you're actually being the person you want to be, and you don't have to go back and repair it. And communal behaviour stadium type behaviour, they get it. And if you see grammar boys on a sideline, then our expectation is that they are going to be positive. They are going to be cheering for their team. They have a hell of a lot of fun, and we're not taking any of that away. But they're not going to be directing anything at the opposition. They're not going to be directing anything at any player on field. They're not going to be making any noises when an opposition, first five is kicking for goal. They're going to show him respect because he's the guy who's out there. So those sort of things, there's the online component, but there's also real life components where they are operating in a world that is very different to the one I grew up in. And we just need to be the adults in the room giving them advice and guidance that is going to help them.
I say to people with social media, it's like we've been given this cocaine and it's gone to our heads. And I look at some of the comments from adults on social media and I go, would you say this face to face? And look, there was a comment, I remember the night that Jacinda Ardern resigned. And I was looking at some of the comments online, and one of them was coming from some people I knew from pretty privileged backgrounds. And I called them out. And I said, if this was your daughter, because I was watching, I thought, I don't care if you agree with the political views or not. This is a woman, and you should not make these comments. And so I sat there for a while, and I thought, no, not having it. And so I called them out. And it was interesting because I'm trying to learn not to call people out, but call them in. And there's a subtle difference, because I thought, I don't want to bully them for them to stop, but get them to think and go, if this was your daughter, would you be okay with this? If this was your wife, would you be okay with this? And anyway, I had some effect that night, and it was just like, no, this is not cool. And look, the booing thing, I have hosted families at home, and they've had kids there, and we've been watching rugby, and they start booing the opposition, and I go, we don't do that here. And it's interesting, I didn't think this would come up, but it's just like, this is not cool.
No.
This is not cool. This is not sport either.
No. But it seems that as we've become used to living in an online environment, for want of a better sort of phrase, that we've become less tolerant of other people's opinions, and unless they're harmful to others, then I think we need to actually just grow up a little bit and say, well, you can have that opinion and I can hold this opinion, and why can't we have open debate about this, and not actually, you go back to what we say about, when we're dealing with young men with their actions, I'm going to talk to you about your actions, I'm not going to talk to you about who you are. So don't allow those things to define other people. Allow them to say, you're welcome to that opinion, but maybe we could have a discussion and a debate on this, and maybe I can influence your opinion, your view, because why wouldn't that be a welcome change to our current climate?
And Tim, it's something with collective intelligence. Our vision is to try and raise the collective intelligence of the nation, which means, we actively put people together who would not, in a day-to-day environment, come together, and put them in an environment where they can have conversations and have different views, and that's not accepted, that's preferred for people to have different views, rather than, because it's interesting, we've since you've been with us, we have really fostered this thing of like-hearted, not like-minded, and so we put more effort into the diversity thing than when you're in a team, and try and get through to them that this difference is wickedly creative. As long as you don't try and change the other person's mind, there's no need to do that. Just listen to them, acknowledge the view, give a counter view if you want, but sometimes there's actually no need to do that. And just, you talked about before, just being there with those families, that's enough, So I think there is a whole skill level that is lacking or lost at the moment in this sphere, and it's like we've become more rabid, immature, and you see it in the schools, Tim, with the schools playing each other, and some of the behaviour from the parents, and right through to primary school. And I go, what is that?
Yeah, well, there's a growing issue in terms of national sporting organisations thinking that secondary school sport is high performance sport, and that they're high performance pathways, because they're all become so competitive. They want to attract that very best player. They're very concerned that they might go somewhere else, and so we're creeping down and having increasing pressure from national sporting organisations to be high performance. Having a debate right now about the place of live streaming And I know, there are schools across the country who are televising, gone back to televising rugby. I'm vehemently opposed to it. And I'm vehemently opposed because there are snippets of those live streaming platforms that end up in social media, and then they end up being commented on, and you talk about the extreme responses.
The vitriol.
So why should a young man have to play a game of rugby, make a mistake, and for that to be replayed to him for the rest of his life? Why, when you talk about poor behaviour on sidelines, why do we want to actually see that? Why do we accept that? Why are we allowing that? Because by screening it, we're endorsing it. I think it's abhorrent, and so we're trying to champion a change to say we actually, as schools, have an obligation for the care of these young, in our context, young men. And so where is the child protection, components in live streaming? You lose total control. You live stream, and we saw national swimming live streaming 15-year-olds. We're seeing that it's just becoming readily acceptable. And I understand the component where, grandma and granddad who can't be in Tauranga watching that, it's great for them to be able to watch it. But there are no control mechanisms around that right now.
They don't have to watch it, Tim. Back in the day, if you couldn't get to the game, you didn't see the game.
Yeah, agreed.
Right? It's not the end of the world.
Yeah. So we've got to manage, and I think, again, there are some of the responsibilities we have today to actually not allow the commercialisation of secondary school age students, because it's a very attractive product. They're very attractive products. You watch, secondary school sport now, it's a very high level, and it's free flowing. It's like, we've lost something in some of the professionalism,
100%.
Professional sport. And so why are people wanting to get in and watch college sport? Because it is just free ranging is probably the right word.
Yep.
That doesn't mean we should commercialise it. That doesn't mean we should put it on platforms for ready access. And we need to be protecting them, not encouraging them to go into a high performance environment. We want them playing multiple sports, We don't want them saying, well, I'm just going to specialise in rugby or I'm going to specialise in cricket. We want them to be able to play, at least 2 sports a year, and we should be discouraging them from specialising. But they're what's coming through with national sporting organisations who are really doing the opposite.
There's a young man who came through the tennis system from Italy, Yannick Sinner, who's now number 1 in the world. And I've been following him for about 3 years beforehand. Tennis is one of my geeky things. And I've got a nephew in the UK who's into tennis, and I said, check this kid out. And he was coming through, and you get to the quarterfinals and different stuff. And there was something about him. I just liked the way he played with a freedom, athleticism, wasn't all bulked up. And then in every tournament, I'd say he's going to win the tournament. I said this for about 2 years. He finally won in Australia, the Australian Open, a couple of years ago. 80 months ago. And the speech was quite something. And he got up and he said, I wish every kid had my parents. I was allowed to play lots of different sports, and I chose tennis because it's what I wanted to do. But I spent a lot of time skateboarding and doing this and doing that because my parents didn't put any pressure on me. Mm. He just won Wimbledon, and his parents turned up for the first time to a professional game of his. First time. He's won, he's number 1 in the world. They turned up for the first time.
Phenomenal.
And I thought, so cool, rather than this bloody great entourage of pressure. Mm. And the kid is just an amazing ambassador. And I tell that story to people and go, listen to that. The world number 1 was not a tennis protege. Yes, he came through yes, as a teenager, he was up there, he was playing Alcaraz and so. But that piece before that, he was allowed to be a kid, and he was allowed to be a teenager.
Yep.
And you only get one smack at it.
And that's our responsibility as schools.
Yep.
You know, we got to be schools, education first, and we still describe, you know, all sports and performing arts in this place as extracurricular, because it is extra, and you got to put your primary focus onto your academic education, and remember that the other thing, they're all good things, they're great things to be part of, but actually education first.
There's a boy that came through Palmy Boys. Went through the first 15 system. He was captain of the team. He went into a program, all that sort of stuff. I know his father. I saw him the other day and I said, "How's he doing?" He said, "Oh, he's home." And I said, "Oh, so he was at university in the program." So what's he home with? And he said, "Oh, he's had a really bad injury playing rugby, and his flatmates, he's got 5 flatmates, and they're all there for different stuff, and he said 3 of them will never play rugby again."
It's sad. Yeah, sad, isn't it?
And I just think
Tough.
that's and maybe this, but I said, "How long is he out for?" He said, "It'll be a good 18 months or 2 years." And I'm thinking, okay, that's a long time, and that means that actually it might not get back on the field. And it's trying to get that balance. And I thought, that kid has been on a program, on an escalator, you know, for maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. And that's just been taken away from him. And it's interesting, Tim, that we've had some All Blacks in collective intelligence, and we've had Super Rugby players. And we've talked to, I remember having a conversation with the father of one of these guys, and he said, "I wish my son never played rugby." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Because when he finished, he was lost and he didn't know what to do, and it was really, you know, his mental health just took such a knock and he was not prepared." I think they're preparing kids better now through those super contracts and so forth, but yeah, he said it was really, really tough on him. He said, "I wish he never played rugby." Yeah. Tim, for a young man now, with all the social media, I mean, you had kids coming through. What advice would you give parents of kids who are 11, 12 years of age?
Well, have base expectations of them. Let them understand what your family values are. If you've got clearly articulated family values, then they know what you know. That's first and foremost. That they know where you as parents stand, and that you are the parent and they are the child. And then I think, you know, it's that Coach K stuff, you know, I understand that as a parent I will act as I see fit. If you're not adding something to our family environment, or you're breaking basically our code, then that is your right as a parent. And we need parents to be parents, just like we need teachers to be teachers. And sometimes, you know, I think you get to a point, our eldest is 28, and I think, you know, he's now, you know, a very good friend as well, but he wouldn't have described me like that when he was 12 or when he was 10. It's a very different relationship, and it's important that we're the ones who are guiding our children so that they actually do have the best opportunities. We talk about, you know, being cruel to be kind, and that sometimes that tough love stuff has to be in place so that actually they can be the person that they want to be, and they have the opportunities available to them, because they'll start building personal credibility as they get a little bit older. And no one talks about personal credibility. You know, they don't don't say to, we don't say to kids, well, if you've been disruptive, you've been disruptive, you've been disruptive, you've been disruptive. Well, of course, you've lost the faith of the teacher. No one describes that to them as that's because you've got no credibility. So we need them to actually understand who they are, who they want to be, and that they have to act in a consistent manner in order to provide that perception to others. And so to answer your question, it's be the parent, just make the tough calls, make decisions, don't opt out, opt in, and be prepared to be disliked, like being a headmaster.
I said this earlier today to a group of people. I said people pleasers are the ones who please the least number of people because nobody knows where they stand.
Agreed.
And then get surprised when they piss people off. Because you go, well, hang on, yesterday it was this and today it's that. It's an interesting thing with, we talk more about it now, Tim, around character traits. We work with adults that were not surprised when they're late, or when they pay late, or when they let stuff drift, and you just know that's them. And then you get other people who you can rely on, and the difference is quite stark, and and people think with the just letting stuff slip, people notice that. And when you stop relying on people, opportunities and things just don't happen because you have a choice and go, well, I run with this or run with this. And it's a really easy one and talent, doesn't even come into it. It's just like the reliability is so important in anything. Will they be there? Yeah. Last question, Tim. How have the parents changed since you started either as a principal or as a teacher over that 30-odd years?
I think probably more parents want to do more for their sons and give their sons more. Probably from their own personal experience, that they are doing that for all of the right reasons, the goodness of their heart, that they want to say, I'm giving you something I never had. But what they forget is that their child has not had their experiences, and actually sometimes through hardships, through firm decisions being made, you are growing in resilience. And by more parents being kind and providing their children with whatever, not necessarily whatever they wish, but by providing them with easy routes, pathways through, because they really think that they're doing the best and providing them with the best opportunities, they're actually doing the opposite. And that's that coddling of the American mind stuff, where actually what we've done is we're growing a more fragile generation, because they've got a higher, they can have a higher sense of entitlement when parents behave like that, and they haven't had to struggle. And I think in a learning context, you learn when sometimes learning is tough, because learning is difficult, and you have to work that out for yourself. So there are some things in life that you have to work out for yourself, and you have to work out that there is a word called no, and if more and more parents could actually say no not necessarily rely, in our context, on the school doing those things with the times we get where parents might tell us that their son needs a haircut. And that's fine. We can work with the young man in that regard. But why don't you do that as a parent? Because all you're doing is giving me the power. So I'd say that's the same as teachers. If teachers actually deal with the issues that are in their classrooms, rather than feeding them up, why are you giving me that authority? Because what that young man is going to do is he's going to respect me because I'm going to be the one who says X, Y, and Z. Why don't you do it? Because then you build the respect. And I think it's the same in parenting. Build the respect by actually being the parent, and when you need to say no, you need to say no. This, commentary from young men who say, well, Bobby's parents are letting him go, and Johnny's parents are letting him go. You're the only one. Well, I think my daughter, I said, well, why don't you give me their numbers and I'll ring them. I just ring their parents and I'll have that conversation. And we'll have that conversation between parents, and it's like, no, that's unacceptable. Well, it's not unacceptable to me. So sometimes just being the unreasonable one is a critical part of parenting.
Tim, it sparked a thought that something I've become aware of recently is the competition between schools. This is what I think it is. Has created this environment where schools have got all these overseas trips and extra stuff, and I'm not sure if that is a marketing thing or a real need there to do that. But I see some parents with teenagers really struggling to be able to afford, in state schools and private schools, to pay for these extra things on top that my generation never did. But there's some quite extravagant bloody trips going on.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know whether it's. I don't know whether it's marketing. The trips we do, we have a range of overseas trips, but largely, and domestic trips, but largely they're curriculum related. So, Western Heritage trip in terms of classics and Latin, French language tours, etc., universities tours, those sorts of things. It's never entered my mind that we would do that to market ourselves, because I don't believe in...
That might be just a cynic, and I'm not talking...
Yeah. No, I know what
it
you're
seems
saying.
to be lots of sports stuff and cricket tours and rugby tours.
Yep, probably is. So in a grammar context, I'd ignore all of that, because I think we're comfortable in our own skin and we'll say these are the things we're going to do. We're not really interested in what anyone else is doing. We have great working relationships with, the other central Auckland schools and the other, high-performing schools across Auckland. And we're sharing expertise and we're sharing knowledge, and we're doing it for all, I think, really good reasons. And I'm impressed with the quality of schools across Auckland and the way we interact. So I'm not sure what the intent of other schools are in terms of that marketing type of component, or yeah. I mean, if you when I went to Palmy Boys, we had a trip to Masterton. It was an overnight. It was a ripper. And in many ways you get exactly the same experience, because you're doing that bonding exercise and you with the group that you're part of. But I think the world is a much more easily accessible place, even between the difference between my time at school and now. You just can access the world, and you can do it at a reasonable for the sort of things that they're doing, you can do it at a reasonable cost, but you are right at the same time. There are only certain students and certain families who can access that, because it is a significant extra cost on top of, a sort of daily living.
Tim, thank you for your time.
Pleasure.
Congratulations on a sterling bloody career working with boys.
I hope I've still got something to go.
I'm not. I hope it didn't sound like a retirement speech, but just acknowledging, the work you've put into it's and don't shake it off. I'm giving you a compliment.
No, I love it. I love doing what I do.
It's thousands of boys have had the benefit of your leadership, and so thank you for that. My boys included, and. Any plans for the future?
I don't want to outstay my welcome here. You mentioned at the start, 10 years. I'd always sort of thought, in running a school like Palmy Boys and Grammar, your responsibility is to lead a community. So I could never do a 3 to 5 leading a school, like leading either of those schools, because unless you got kicked out, of course, then I have no choice. But you're leading a community, and my sense here is our community is just getting stronger and stronger. When I ask the community for support, we're getting it for our boys and for the future. And that takes years to build, and we go back to credibility. It goes years to build credibility and to build a sense where you are a part of the fabric. And so no, I don't. I have no idea. Anne and I obviously talk about that sort of stuff now that we're the only ones at home and rattling around the house, but there's still I've still got plenty of passion to do what I'm doing, and we're trying to think out 50 years as to what's going to happen in this place. So it's not slowing; it's getting faster, and that's exciting. And if by the time I do go here, if I can say I feel like I've left it a little bit better, then that'll be the time to say job done. And hopefully I've been a believer that the right thing comes along. I haven't ever really gone hunting for things in terms of a career. They have sort of happened in a way, and I still sort of believe that, and I don't yet think it's not a finished job here. And if they don't kick me out, then I'll hang around for a little bit longer.
Let's end on that note, Tim. Thank you very much for the conversation. It's nice to be back, and well done.
Thanks, Harv.